Are we ready to get shaken or stirred today, beautiful people? Because it's that time. Grab that mocktail, cocktail, or no-tail, because things are about to get shaken or stirred.
Hi everyone, this is Ozzy.
This is Ellum.
What are we drinking today, Ellum?
Well, today I went back to my kombucha route, so I've been having a little, issues. So, probiotics, they say. So, sipping on that. What about you, Ozzy?
I am having a glass of water.
Oh.
My allergies kicked in. I was with my parents earlier this morning, and they have dogs, and you guys might hear me with some sniffles or congestion. It's just allergies. So,
okay.
Sorry.
Sorry in advance to the people.
Apologies. But today's theme.
Yes. We're talking, I don't know if everyone encounters this. I'm sure many do. But how many times have we started overthinking in our life?
Do you overthink a lot?
Do we want to even get started on that topic?
Yes, that is today's topic. Oh, shit.
So, people, there's a tons of balloons in my place. And, of course, one of them decided to pop and give us a little bit of a heart attack now. What a way to spice things up for today's podcast.
Woke me up. All right.
So, overthinking.
What are we thinking? What do you overthink about? Or what is overthinking for you?
Overthinking, I feel like that's just part of my life.
That's your personality trait.
That is my personality trait. If they say, what is your personality? Overthinker. I think it's definitely part of it. What is overthinking? I don't know what it is about me, but as a kid, I always would think about a lot of things. And my mind would just wander a lot.
Wait, and can you provide more context there? When you were a kid, what situations would cause you to overthink as a kid?
I think it was starting from when when my dad passed, I think that's when I started to overthink. Because I ended up getting...
How old were you?
10.
10. And
so my mom would treat me not like a child, but more as an adult or like a counterpart. And so when you're left with certain topics or like you were forced upon it, right? Like you were forced to think about it. These questions would be asked, and the immediate feedback would be, well, you can speak English, you know how to do this. And so my mind would think through all of what we could do in that scenario. It would even mean sometimes I would pick up the phone and talk to an adult on the other line.
That's crazy. Yeah. And
so I had to take care of business. Because I had to do that so much, and then I would get scolded if it didn't go right. And it's like, what am I supposed to know as a 10-year-old? I don't know anything. Well, you know English. Like, don't you know what it's saying?
Yeah, I hated that statement.
Yeah, like, you're born here. You have, and one of the most famous sayings my mom would always give me is like, well, you speak English, don't you have a mouth and a brain? You know both. So you have both and you know English. So use it.
Yeah. And
I was shy. I was introverted. I would get in trouble for being too shy in those instances. So when I was forced to think about how to come up with solutions or address that issue, I think it just continued. And then when life happened, right? And you're like, and I became an adult, same scenario, like, why is it like this? Like, why is my life going this way? What can I do? I'll think through, like, what are the ways that I could rectify it? So I think deep down inside, overthinking can come into problem solving as well. So I think what I realized was, dang, I'm pretty not bad. Like, could be better, but decent at problem solving and trying to address how I can get around that situation or a scenario. And then it just spirals. Like, now it's my personality. Like, and all of the scenarios where...
So bringing it to current day, what makes you spiral? What makes you overthink?
Spiraling is when you just cannot come to a solution and there's no conclusion at all.
But what causes that? What are there certain things in your life that, like, right away, like, could it be your partner that causes you to overthink? Could it be your dog? Could it be your neighbor? What, like, your career? What causes you to get triggered?
I think the I think the topic that always makes me overthink is probably career. I think it's because I just put it so high on the list of things. I think when you're early dating, overthinking is definitely a thing that
Don't point at me.
I mean, I did it too. You've seen me do it.
For sure.
Yeah, I think it's this level of like uncertainty, right? And I think uncertainty for me is usually career, and career is just uncontrollable. You can't control what's going to happen. The market is insane too. So there's a lot of that. When it comes to early dating, same scenario. You don't have control over that. You don't know what that other person is thinking. And so those are the two main topics that I think. Friendships sometimes, right? When there's this level of lack of security and safety with that counterpart. That's when you start spiraling, because you're like, wait, it was a safe space, and now somehow the safety was like the rug was pulled out under you, and now they're like, what the heck is happening? Things are just flying. I thought that was a trusted friend.
Have I done anything or said anything that made you overthink?
I think for you, no. That's why I think we have a very solid foundational friendship that has lasted us this long. I mean, do you recall any instances where we were like, yeah, this is not good, like things are off?
Where I question our friendship?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
If anything, I think you probably already acknowledged this, but given the fact that you are someone who is an overthinker, right? Sometimes it could be a lot to take in from the other person's side or my side, in my experience, right? It's like seeing you go through this emotional roller coaster could also, in a sense, take a toll on me, because I am an empath,
the counterpart,
right? And I am someone who is your friend, who does care for you and who would like to help you in some way or other, but at the same time, there's no way to really help you in that sense, right? All I could do is really just listen and be a shoulder to lean on and let you vent. It can be a lot, right? So I think what I feel like I'm good at in order to bring that balance between our friendship is creating space between us.
You're like, I need space.
I'll let my kids talk right now. Can we talk when I'm ready to digest like emotions, right? Because I am someone who does like feel emotions and like process emotions. So trying to take in your emotions or process them for you, like, I don't know why I do this, but I just feel emotions, right? And like just trying to, in a sense, like, what would Ellen do? Like, just putting myself in your shoes is just so much to see you go through that whirlwind of questions, emotions, and all that anxiety that you do experience. It's like, dang, girl, take a chill pill. But I can't even say that to someone who is going through an emotional roller coaster, because then like that triggers that person even more, I feel like.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think that's why I come to terms with like, when I'm in the overthinking space, I apologize to everyone, because I know that's me like grasping for like a hand, I don't know, like a lot of things. And so, and I know myself when it's getting too much, because I can feel it myself. Like if I again, as an overthinker, I flip the card and I think to myself, dang, what if I was the receiving end of that? What a shit show is that? Right? So the guilt hits when you're kind of going through that too. But there's nothing, I don't know, it's just so hard. And on the flip side, I think through how I used to be. So we talked about journaling in a couple of those episodes. So that's what I would do too. But the problem is that as life has gotten through more complexities, and I don't know, it feels like higher risks. I don't know. It just feels more than what it was before. Before, it's like you could control it. I could at least overthink in my own brain and then process it and come to terms with it. Now it's like the options continue to like become wider, so there is no clear answer that I can overthink by myself and come to terms with. Does that make sense? Like,
I feel like you're kind of describing of how what I do in order to stop myself from overthinking. Because you just said, there could be hundreds of reasons why something is happening, and there's no sense of control at that point. because you could think of like plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan, 2.8 dash, section C if and but. There's so many possibilities that overthinking does not help me at all. Like, I'm just doing myself an injustice to overthink. And that's just the way I approach my overthinking, because I know I could go down a rabbit hole. And usually I know what triggers my overthinking is primarily my career. Like, it might just be like, I don't know the answer to this response, and then that little thing is just escalating because I need someone from product to answer my question, and like I'm like, I need to get back to the customer ASAP. Like, right. I'm like, what are my other options? And then I start to like overthink. I'm like, wait, just take a chill pill. I'm not saving anyone's life right now.
Yeah.
Like, I could, breathe for a second. Like, what's the urgent? Like, I have a sense of urgency, but like for it to take a toll on my life and to me to feel stressed over it, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of just hit the brakes. I'm like, hold on, like why am I triggered?
Right.
I'm like, I'm gonna find the answer eventually, like maybe like in an hour or so, but I'm gonna find the answer. I'm gonna find what I'm looking for. Is it gonna happen right away? Probably not. And I just need to and I just find that comfort of not knowing. And that helps me just release all the questions and all the overthinking on my side. I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone, but it's just the way I've learned how to manage my overthinking.
Interesting. When it comes to non-work stuff, how do you handle that then? Because I'm sure those instances must occur. Yeah, like, yes, primarily, I know you mentioned it does come from work, but...
Yeah.
I mean...
With my friendships, I feel pretty solid. I don't feel like I need to overthink a situation. Well, an example comes to mind, and this person does listen to the podcast, so I might put them on blast. What kind of comes to mind is... Oh, you were you were there, actually.
Oh, now I'm curious.
It's not about you.
Okay.
But you were there. Remember when we went out to the Presidio and I was on a date, and from that we met at the park eventually.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And then we decided to go grab drinks and dinner. Right? So, and then at dinner, my friend showed up, and like they had something going on at that point in time, and it was just like really gray and hazy, and the guy I was dating, he started to ask questions. I'm like, oh, I'm
Oh, yeah.
And then at that point, I'm like, what is he doing? Why would he do that? Like, did he not know, like, we're in early stages of dating? Like, this is too soon to do,
Yeah.
Like, did you think about this? Like, now I'm like, he's now the person who I'm dating is going to come back asking me questions to clarify the situation.
Right.
And I don't like lying, so I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm not going to tell him the whole truth about, like, what's happening in your life.
Right.
Like, because I don't feel like he needs to know what's happening in your life, right? It's your life. You do as you do, and you navigate it as you want to navigate it. But that just puts me in a really awkward situation of, like, of, like, clearly his actions are saying something, and I know the backstory, but I don't... Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So that's when I started to, like... overthink at that point. I'm like, fuck, he's gonna ask me questions, and like,
what do you say?
Like, what do I say? I don't want to lie, because like, what's the point of dating if I'm gonna lie? Like, I don't want to be in this circumstance. Like, I don't like it whatsoever. And obviously, I then readdressed it with my friend after the fact. I'm like, dude, that just, you put me in a very uncomfortable situation. Like, that was not okay per se. Like, dating this guy, that situation didn't affect my dating life with him, like why things ended or fizzled out. It was another reason why I just had to let that go. But that like really made me overthink of like, did you even consider what was happening today? But we touched base, and I was like, let's not let this happen again.
Wait, but what caused you to immediately want to address with that person, right? Because then... in my mind as an overthinker, right, I would not only overthink the moment, but then now you're dealing with the after, like the precautions afterwards, and you're like, okay, shit, what do I do? Do I just let it roll? Because if it's to that degree that it bothered you, like in my mind, I would be as an overthinker, being like, should I address it? Should I not? Well, how do I address it? Like, these are all of the things that I think through.
Like, so how is he gonna react?
Right, like, is he gonna take it too personal? How do like, is he a very, like, there's all of these things that I would.
And if you've never experienced conflict together, it's like, I don't know this other side of the person of how they manage conflict.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And I'm very much about I'm gonna have to address at some point because it's just gonna be an itch in my back, and I'm gonna have to scratch it.
Yeah. So for you, like, in that moment, did you go through all of that thought process, or was it a matter of fact that you would address it and you didn't have to think too much about it? It was just more, I'm just gonna talk to that friend. It's fine.
At that point, I was like, I just remember my date looking over at me, like, looking all confused. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'll address it later. I'm like, this is not the time or the place to have this kind of discussion. And when he did bring it up later, I didn't divulge all the details, but I'm like, he's figuring out his life, like, it is what it is kind of thing. And then with my friend, I didn't hold it against him because I knew what he was going through, and it just wasn't the ideal situation to do that, like, I understand what you're going through. I have empathy for you, and I don't know how it came up, but it came up. We addressed it.
Like, casually.
And we just watched it, and, like, it was no big deal.
Okay, so you didn't even overthink whether I would address it or not.
No,
like,
but at that point in time, I'm like, FML. Like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to make my date feel uncomfortable, but it was too late at that point.
Yeah, it was done.
Yeah.
It was happening.
It's happening.
Yeah. Okay, interesting.
Do I overthink anything else? Sometimes with family, I feel like I've learned how to establish my boundaries, and I'm really good at saying no. And with family, that's really hard because I was raised to be much more on, like, be a yes man, and you only speak to when you're spoken to.
Yeah.
Like, very culturally of respect your elders. And so me just going against the grain makes me feel really uncomfortable. But, like, sometimes I just need to respect my own boundaries and just stick to my guns. And if I have to say no to my mom, then I'm going to have to say no. And if I'm not going to be at a family event, then I just can't make it. And I'm sorry whose ever feelings I hurt for not showing up, but I just can't make it. Like, there's nothing I could do about how you're going to react or your emotions. And I don't like making family feel disappointed or sad, but sometimes it's just a matter of fact. Like, I can't make it.
Yeah. And then from those instances, you overthink a little bit, or you
I
just
overthink
come to
of, like, I come to terms with it. I'm like, I can't control how you're gonna react to me setting boundaries, but at least I know I could respect myself, and hopefully you can respect my decisions. And if not, then I'm not gonna worry about it. Clearly, you don't respect me enough either. But it's never gone to that point.
Right.
But that's just my way of thinking.
The way of thinking. But I guess with overthinking, do you feel like it's evolved? So this is how you're thinking today, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, recently, right?
Yeah.
So if you're to roll it back to when you were younger, how has your overthinking evolved? Like, you must have learned that this is the way that I'm going to address it, right? Was there a pivotal moment that caused that, or is it just something over time you somehow built and learned from every instance or an example or an interaction or a moment that you were, okay, you know what, forget it. If it's like when repetition occurs, you kind of take that repetition and learn, and you're like, well, this works here, we'll use it the next time.
Yeah.
Well, oops, it didn't work, so let me modify this one again, and okay, now it's perfected. This is my way of operating. If something similar like this happens, that's it. I don't care. Like, I'm gonna go that way.
Yeah, I think, I feel like I always go back to my learning lessons when I was in therapy of how to control not control my emotions, but how to honor my emotions and my boundaries. I feel like that was my pivotal point of, like, maybe a year or so, almost 2 years of going into therapy, of, like, learning how to respect my own boundaries, my value, and just honoring myself. I think that's what helped me to kind of hit the brakes when I do start to overthink, because as a kid, I experienced several, like, I experienced several traumatic events as a child, right? And then growing up as a tween or even a teenager, Spanish is my first language, so that one, the traumatic events as a child, which, yeah, so, and then into going into middle school, having Spanish be my first tongue and just navigating middle school as an awkward, like going through puberty, like trying to understand my sexuality, not really knowing the language, and like all these things just stacking up against each other and really affecting or making me question who I am and my identity. And just at that point in time, I have to be on the defense.
Right.
And I have to be able to understand of all the possible possibilities that might come out as a seventh grader going through middle school, right? Like, I feel like that's where my like overthinking did get triggered.
I see.
Because I was I didn't know who I was at that point in time. So it's
Right.
like I needed to make sure I was on the offense or the defense, sorry, at all times. And that's where kind of my overthinking did start. And so obviously that kind of just went through high school, through college, of me having to be on the defense of like making sure I'm prepared, of like I have all the possible paths understood in order to combat whatever's I was fearing.
Happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think, because as you're talking, the thing that I was thinking about is like confidence.
Oh, for sure.
So is overthinking correlated with confidence?
I think so.
Okay.
I think there is some kind of correlation to it.
Like self-confidence or just confidence, period?
Aren't they the same thing?
You could be confident about the situation. And then I think that's different from self-confidence. You're just self-confident.
I see the difference.
Yeah.
In my experience, I feel like my confidence, once again, it came from having to work on myself and understanding who I was, what I like, what I didn't like, understanding my boundaries. I feel like that is my if I'm being honest with myself and with like the whole public, I don't feel like I start to come to myself and really accepting who I am until maybe the age of 29-ish.
Oh, okay.
Like 28. Like I had zero, like before that, sure, I could play it off, but I didn't feel like I was established.
Like, really?
I didn't have my bearings. I didn't, if I don't know, like I wasn't confident in myself, but I feel like once I hit 28, 29, I've gone just through enough BS where I'm like, why am I so fearful? Like, of what? And then just having to work on my insecurities, my inner doubts, all of that, and just being okay with it at one point. It's just like, all right, cool, like, going with the flow, like, life, you already threw hella shit at me, like, what's some more? Like, I'm someone who is resilient and willing to fight. I'm willing to fight a good fight.
Yeah.
Not a physical one, but, an emotional one.
Physical one.
A physical one, girl, I'm running.
The first one to dip. Goodbye. Bitch, don't leave me.
We're running.
It's interesting because I think as you're talking, and I didn't realize that confidence could be correlated with overthinking. And then when you said fear, it immediately made me realize, fear, okay, on the flip side, fear is correlated with overthinking.
Right.
And I'm playing it back into myself.
There's something that you fear.
I definitely fear something.
I'm not trying to be a therapy session here, but
no,
I feel
I'm
like
feeling that as
with
we're
overthinking, I feel like there's some sense of fear of an outcome that might not be appealing to you.
Yeah, and I think that's why.
And you're trying to control that outcome.
Yeah.
Versus me, I'm like, the outcome's gonna be the outcome, and I just have to, in a way, understand the outcome, and then take it from there. Like, I can't try to control the outcome because that's just not possible. Like, yeah, there's certain outcomes you can control, sure. Like, but those are like less higher stakes. The ones I feel like you do stress over are so like high stakes, and there's so many elements, there's so many terms and factors, so many conditions. Like, girl, stop thinking.
But I think it's the fear. Like, I think that's what I'm coming to realize. But the thing is, like, is it a fear for myself? Like, am I scared, or is that being triggered from?
You're trying to protect yourself, I think. You're trying
Yeah.
to protect yourself from a bad outcome.
But I guess I don't even know why I want to be protecting
Go to therapy.
I was like, because I started thinking about it, I was like, man, like, maybe it's because I feel like I think it comes to parents. I feel like then it turns into a failure. That's what it is. And the worst case scenario is being a failure by the definition that I think is preset by my parents.
Oh, for sure.
And so for me, career, like, I think
it's high value.
Is high value.
And you're trying to control the outcome.
Yeah.
And your job kind of correlates to reaching a higher sense of education. There's correlation with your degree in a sense.
Yeah, which I talked about in the other podcast, right? Like, I felt that the whole goal was to be stable and have more money, which was all derived from my upbringing. And then career, like, if you backtracked it all, right? You're like, to make money, you must have schooling. In order to have schooling, get into a good school.
Right.
In order to get into a good school, you must get good grades and do everything possible. So all the way up till that, it was all controllable, right? If it didn't go awry, I knew that I could pick up and do something else. But then in this case scenario, there's not much more I could pick up and do something else, right? Like, you're there, and that's why I think it's just it's like higher stakes. Rough.
So how do you let go of, obviously we started the podcast saying that this is who you are, it's part of your personality trait as an overthinker.
Yeah.
So how do you let go of situations that do take over your emotional state of mind?
I think it's like a very long term, it depends on the stakes and the problem, but it's a journey. And I think with the support, like, I definitely lean on friends a lot. I definitely journal to myself and think through a lot on the side too. And I think that's how I come to a conclusion, and it depends on how big of an issue it is, and that will tailor how long that's gonna last. And slowly but surely, things just slowly drop. So, like, when
and another higher stage comes along, you're like, oh, this priorities have shifted. Now we overthink about this.
I know. But I think the thing is, things slowly come to pieces. It just, for me, I don't seem to get, like, I can't even wait for the things to drop. It's more like I'm overthinking as all these things are going to drop. And as slowly the pieces are being put together, like a puzzle piece. Just imagine, like, you throw 1,000 pieces onto the table and you're like freaking the shit out, because that's the problem. This is your problem.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. And then as time progresses, what do? You put one and one together. You keep doing that. And as you add, now, like, I don't know how long it is. Let's say it's a month of this shit, right? Which is, let's not hope. But as you get there, you're like, soon the picture is completed. And it is only until, like, it's very clear that it's the end is near, meaning that picture is going to be finished, that's when I'm like, well, now I'm done, I'm at peace.
Do you think there's any pros to overthinking?
I think the pros of overthinking is not being too surprised of what the outcome is, because you had been thinking through all case scenarios. But then the flaw, though, right? The con is severe, right? Because you're like it's like you're hurting your own health, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, all the things. Sometimes I wish I was just more carefree, yellowy, because then, well, I mean, let's talk about it, right? Like, skincare is important, and all you get is wrinkles, you get white hairs popping up.
Stress, stress is not good for you.
Yeah, and I think, like, for me, I'm just high stress because I'm overthinking too much, you know?
Yeah.
Which is all in all, like, I wish I could be more carefree and YOLO. But until I understand why, I guess it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
To
fair.
Yeah, get that under control.
For me, the pro, I think, to overthinking, because, I mean, I tend to, I guess, overthink in some aspects, but more on a neutral level, I feel like. But I feel like with overthinking, what it does help with is, for example, for my career, I need to be strategic on how I go about positioning myself. And I need to be able to think a couple steps ahead of how X, Y, and Z solution is going to help ABC challenge.
Right.
And I need to take into consideration a couple of like factors that could kind of just cause hiccups or challenges along the way, and how to address that to ensure that the sales actually goes through without hurting the relationship, right? So in a sense, overthinking helps me analyze the circumstance to ensure that the path or the strategies has a good foundation.
So it's like in your profession, you have leveraged the overthinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To think ahead, what are the pros and cons that could happen,
right?
And how are we going to address them once we get there?
Yeah.
Because the last thing a customer wants is to be caught off guard.
Right.
And if you could prevent that from happening, then kudos to you.
Right. I think you bring up a good point. I do think that I've flexed it. It took me a long time to figure out the pro of overthinking, but professionally in the career aspect, I think I'm quite good at thinking through and structuring and organizing thoughts, only because I am an overthinker, right? And then when things are just not coming together, that's when I know I made a mistake and I didn't overthink enough of that case scenario. But because I'm such a severe overthinker, when a mistake to that degree is made, in my mind, I'm like, I've already thought through why this could be a case scenario. So, but I definitely think that throughout my career, someone in my life would be like, or like a in the professions, like a mentor or manager would say like, you know, you're really good at problem solving. You're really good at structuring and organizing your thoughts. You should own that, right? And I didn't even, I only thought of like stress and overthinking, or overthinking is like negative because it's exhausting. I'm tired all the time. But the problem is that like, if you like, the way that I was thinking about it was, oh, it's just negative, and then someone was able to flip the script and identify it as a positive. And so I like how you don't even go that deep in the overthinking enough as me, but I'm just next level. But you've already identified it and how you can
use it to my advantage and in a positive lens. Yeah. I mean, I enjoy it, and I think that's what makes me so strong in my career, because sometimes it is going to be high stakes, stressful situation, but what I do in order to ensure that I don't come across as, well, to ensure things keep going as they should, I just keep a level-headed perspective. I keep cool, I keep calm, collected, and that just, I don't know, versus like panting and like sweating, like I think those two approaches are just so different, 100%. And one of them is going to take you way longer than the other one. So that the fact that I've been able to just kind of have a poker face when like shit hits the fan, I feel like that's a personality trait that really helps carry me forward.
Nice. Look at you go, overthinking, huh? Two different ways of...
And overthinking also helps with party planning.
I mean, true. Like, think about how we planned our Greece trip. It was some next level planning on my part because I was overthinking all the times. I think a lot of people, when I traveled, I'd be like, yeah, I'll give you my itinerary, all good. They would get it and they'd be shocked at how thorough it is. It's like, it's quite intense. In terms of how much research you do.
Logistics, timing, price points. There's so much to think about when planning a trip or a party. And you could easily forget something.
Oh, 100%. But the whole part of overthinking is making sure you do your best not to forget anything.
Well, the point is, the reason why I overthink when party planning is because I want to make sure my guests are having a good time.
Yeah, same. So the end goal is that, for sure. But then, like, in light of that, you're like, what are all of the case scenarios? Food, activities, timeline. Are we going to have enough free time? Are you going to... I don't know. Is it going to be too expensive? What does the group feel like? I mean, the amount of...
Is everyone going to drink wine? Or are we doing champagne and oysters? Or are we doing beer? Like, you know, like all these other questions.
Yeah, well, that doesn't go with each other, so...
Well, we're inviting Elam, and Elam only likes this.
Oh, someone's allergic to blah. Well, that's out. Yeah.
So overthinking, in a sense, does help for certain things. Maybe it's... Overthinking, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just about how you handle it, and how you could definitely control how you react. And how you're going to move forward with that.
Depends on the level of...
depends.
It totally depends.
Asterisk mark
like asterisk mark, like disclaimer. if the problem is blah,
Yeah.
you may go out of control. But
So tell me, are you feeling shaken?
I am feeling
Stirr'd?
shaken, and I think it's because I think with that whole correlation between overthinking and confidence and fear, I think like, again, as an overthinker, for me, when these little pieces just mesh together, and I never thought any of those three words would be
Correlated?
in one circle.
Yeah.
Like I like, to me, these are three different things.
Right.
Is how I just always thought about it. And as we talked, it kind of came into one, and now there's a lot of learnings and takeaways and more overthinking that I think it'll help me do to understand myself a little bit better. So like from this conversation, I think I just grew.
I love that.
Yeah.
I should be a therapist.
This podcast is transforming lives.
Hey, that was the whole insight.
What about you? Are you feeling shaken or stirred with today's topic?
I don't know, just hearing you express that you feel like you've learned something new out of this conversation makes me feel a little stirred. I feel like just reflecting back on where life started and where I am today, I'm really proud that I've been able to just go in, observe myself, really understand myself, who I am, what I want, and just sticking to my guns current day and being able to just share my experience and my thoughts with you, and just seeing you take something away from it. I was like, oh, cool.
I mean, this is usually our relationship. This is why I keep Ozzy around, and I was like, he's doing the podcast.
Love it. All right, beautiful people. Maybe you're a little shaken, a little stirred. Maybe you relate to Ella or me. You know,
Right.
Both different experiences, both two different approaches to life and how we go about our thoughts, our experiences, living through life. And thoughts are thoughts. But
Just let it fly away. They say like a little butterfly.
You're like, how is it a cloud passing by?
I know. How is it a balloon that you can just pop?
It is. No, I'm just kidding. All right, beautiful people. See you later.
Bye.